Good evening, everyone. Please stand with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome everybody to tonight's City Council meeting. I am going to start with roll call. Okay, so Councilman Loy,
Here.
Councilwoman Kesty,
I'd also like to say that I'd like to recuse myself from voting in the consent agenda.
okay, all right, thank you. Councilwoman Diamond,
Present.
Councilman Henderson,
Here.
Councilman Koch,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
and Councilman Lavaca.
Present.
All right, thank you. So moving into approval of the agenda, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Cox, seconded by Councilman Lavaca. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent agenda, do we have a motion? Items 1 through 7.
I'd like to pull item 6 for discussion, or we can wait on the consent agenda until after we do the promotions and stuff.
No, we
take
have
a
to
second.
do the.
We have to do it now?
Yeah, we need to move forward.
All right,
with
then
this.
I'd like to pull item 6.
Okay, all right.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with item 6 removed.
All right, may I have a second?
Madam Mayor, I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, for sake of time, because we do have individuals that need to be elsewhere, our presenters need to be elsewhere, with 6, we will put this on the bottom of old business, all right? Okay. All right. Okay, so moving on then to introductions. So I've had a request, and Mr. Honey has graciously acquiesced, but I've had a request for the swearing in of the newly promoted sergeants, Austin McCombs and Derek Lowe, to be sworn in, and could I have Sergeant McCombs come forward, please? Raise your right hand, please. I, Austin McCombs,
I, Austin McCombs,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
that I have support of the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
that I will support the laws and the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and will do to the best of my judgment,
and will do to the best of my judgment,
skill, and ability,
skill, and ability,
truly, faithfully,
truly, faithfully,
and impartially perform
and impartially perform
the duties of police sergeant
the duties of police sergeant
in and for the city of Sedro-Woolley,
in and for the city of Sedro-Woolley,
Skagit County, Washington,
Skagit County, Washington,
such as duties are prescribed by law.
such as duties are prescribed by law.
So help me God.
So help me God.
If I could have Officer Lowe. So I, Derek Lowe,
I, Derek Lowe,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I'm a citizen of the United States
and of the state of of Washington,
and of the State of Washington,
and that I will support the Constitution
and I will support the Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
and the laws of the State of Washington,
and the laws in the State of Washington,
and I will do to the best of my judgment,
and I will do to the best of my judgment,
skill, and ability,
skills, and ability,
truly, faithfully,
truly, faithfully,
and impartially perform
and impartially perform
the duties of police sergeant
the duties of police sergeant
in and for the city of Sedro-Woolley,
in and for the city of Sedro-Woolley,
Skagit County, Washington,
Skagit County, Washington,
as such are prescribed by law.
as such as prescribed by law.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
That's nice.
Now they get to walk and celebrate.
You're right. There they go.
All right, and then moving into our second presentation, which I'm going to have Commissioner Browning come up and give the introduction. He will introduce Civil Chief Deputy Will Honey, and we will be talking about the FERC relicensing and the flood control. Mouthful.
See all of you again. I was here a couple of weeks ago. It was a very entertaining and fun council. I really enjoyed this. It's good, really thoughtful, good discussion. I'm Peter Browning. I'm Skagit County Commissioner for District 2, but I still feel strongly about your district as well. Oops. Now does it work? Okay, sorry, yeah. Something about buttons? Jeez. Yeah, sorry about that. All right, anyway, so I'm Commissioner Peter Browning from District 2, but I'm here because we've been working for about 3.5 years on the FERC relicensing, and all of you who grew up around here, you know that dam up there, it has to be relicensed every 50 years. And so any relicensing that we do, we can't make changes unless they're really dramatic. We have the 50-year agreement. So it was really critical for us this time to do something we all felt is very, very important, and that is to get some storage behind the dams during the early months, especially November, December, when we all know, and I grew up in the Nooksack, and I grew up with floods, and I know that those are the most critical times. And so that's the time that we wanted to make sure we had plenty of water storage, just in case the rains did come, as they have been coming. So I'm not the expert in this. I'm just here to say hello to all of you and introduce you. All of you know Will Honey, but also the two smartest people on our group are Jenna Freebowl and Daryl Hamburg, and Daryl's a commissioner in the Drainage District. And so they're going to talk to you about how we've gone about this process, where we are, and some pretty good success stories. And we were referring to ourselves as kind of Team Skagit because it was a really hard-fought battle. It was just not something that was taken lightly, because we were asking essentially Seattle City Light to dump some of their water that would otherwise make them money. And we had to remind them very clearly that one of our roles in having a dam up there is for public safety, protection of life and property, and secondarily, power. And they finally understood that we were serious about this. So again, this is a 50-year agreement, and it's very, very critical. So with that, I'm going to let Will Honey come and talk to you about the details, but thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. This is a big deal. We have reached a settlement agreement with Seattle City Light on flood storage on the Ross, and it's something that's honestly has never happened in the history of all the dams on the Skagit. So to actually move the needle is unprecedented. And, oh, by the way, Peter Browning is very modest. His leadership was very important on how we even got here. So I want to give him kudos. Why is this important? Well, this timing and extra flood storage that we have negotiated is significant in the benefit and the flood reduction to major populations and infrastructure. Burlington, Sedro-Woolley, Mount Vernon, LaConner, Hamilton, and Lyman are all on the Skagit River. They all are impacted by floods. Critical infrastructure, fire, public safety, police, and hospital, especially the hospital just down the road from you, critically impacted by floods. Anacortes Water Treatment Plant. All the water that supplies Woodby Island, Anacortes, Swinomish Nation, and 2 refineries is vulnerable to Skagit flooding. I-5, Highway 9, Highway 20, 536, and Highway 11, all directly impacted by flooding on the Skagit. PSE, power transfer stations, and power utilities that give us the power we have today are in the floodplain. So why is flood protection and storage important? Those are the reasons. Skagit County and the Dike District partner used highly cost-effective strategy to get to where we are today. The Dike District Partnership, which I am the chairman of, to date has invested $130,000 in outside legal counsel and engineering, and my personal time and effort in the settlement. Skagit County has graciously invested Will's time, and the Drainage Consortium has volunteered Virginia's time. In this time, since April 2020, as of April 2023, Seattle City Light has invested $70 million into the settlement agreement. So $130,000 seems like a really well-used investment to get to where we are today. FERC licensing, next slide over there. Okay. FERC licensing, the original flood risk reduction request. Flood control is the preliminary purpose of ROS. I didn't know if anybody knew that, but the number one purpose for the Ross Dam is flood control. It is part of 4 primary purposes: flood control, fish, recreation, and power. But flood control is number one. In 1946, the Corps of Engineers recommended 200,000 acre-feet of storage at the Ross Dam. In 1954, Seattle City Light negotiated and revised that to 120,000 acre-feet by December 1st. Currently, there are certain parts of the storage process that enhance storage for us. One is there was a fish settlement agreement which changed drawdown in order to protect fish. And there are some requirements for recreation, for flow requirements for recreation. What does this do? In a 2021 flood, because of the fact that we had the extra storage because of the fish settlement agreement and recreation requirements, the Ross Dam had 170,000 acre-feet of storage. It was only required at that time to have 60,000. If the Ross Dam was at its required level 60,000, along with the storage in the Baker Reach, if those storage facilities did not have the storage they had, the Skagit would have been 8 feet higher than it was coming down the river at peak. What does that mean? Peak level of the river in the 2021 flood was 37.3 feet. The levees at the Riverside Bridge are approximately 41 feet. If you add 8 feet to that 37.3, you have 45.3, so roughly 4 feet higher than the levees at the bridge. Skagit Valley would have been devastated. This is why we pushed for this storage, because that was an early event and it only required 60,000. We needed more. Mount Vernon flood wall would have been overtopped, believe it or not. It would have been a 100-year event. Current concerns is climate change. There's been recent analysis shown that floods are becoming larger, more frequent, and earlier. These analyses were done by Anchor QEA and John Chandler with PSE. They are written documents. Larger flows are predicted in the future, and they're going to continue to be earlier and more volatile as our glaciers recede. We're going to have water events, we're not going to have snow events. These are the reasons that we pushed for this storage, and this is why we're very pleased that we are able to present to you what we have settled on, and we feel it's fair and just and will give us what we need. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Evil. She's my technical gal. I'm good at talking about this stuff. She's good at talking about the technical stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. It's nice to be back. We were here a couple years ago, so I'm just going to run through just where we started when we came here a couple years ago. So we originally came in requesting 200,000 acre feet. That was supported by the Corps of Engineers. You guys wrote a letter of support, and that was really where we kicked off our negotiations. The second piece of that was wanting the earlier drawdown, so moving from December 1st to November 1st to align better with major floods. So I think Darrell went over most of this in his preview, but really consistent with current operations, and all the way through we've been supported by the Corps of Engineers. Next slide, please. So earlier drawdown, and I won't go into a lot of details, but we presented this a couple years ago. If you look at the major floods from 1992 all the way through our last major flood, 2021, most of them are occurring earlier than December 1st. So it was really important to get the earlier storage as part of our negotiating strategy, the November 1 date. The second piece of our agreement was more storage. So like Darrell said, drawing down Ross so that you have extra capacity to fill up the reservoir in the event of a flood. This is just a picture of the Mount Vernon flood wall in the 2001 flood. Because of other obligations with the license, City Light had extra storage prior to that 21 flood, which was why it was 8 feet lower than it would have been had they not had those other obligations. But it was important to get the flood concerns in the new license so that if those other obligations go away, they would still be mandated to provide the necessary storage. So that's kind of the other key element. So since we had to go through this, we were outnumbered $70 million to $100,000. It was really important for us to work with our partners, and Peter and Will really paved the way for really good relationships with the Upper Skagit Indian Tribe, National Park Service, the resource agencies. And through those relationships, we worked to prepare what we were calling a Ross Integrated Operations Plan. It was pretty clear that we weren't going to get the full 200,000 just for flood storage, and that we needed to be working with partners for fisheries, recreation, other goals. And so throughout the summer of really 2023, our team put together the technical elements of an integrated plan for Ross. We presented that to the comprehensive settlement table, which is everybody that signed on to negotiate a settlement. And that ultimately led to a counteroffer from City Light that was supported at the comprehensive table by the Skagit Treaty Tribes, the key resource agencies, the National Park Service, and quite a few of the other participants. So, it was a lengthy negotiation. Definitely there was a process. So where we ended up, originally, in the next slide, please, you can see the black line shows the current license requirements. Think of this in terms of the water level in Ross. The higher the water level, the less storage space you have. And what you'll see was the green line is where we ended up in terms of a license article. So November 1, we negotiated successfully for, and we got 140,000 acre feet of hard storage compared to the current license. City Lights also agreed to an operational buffer, so that gives them additional 3 feet to sort of manage those competing interests, and they won't encroach into that operational buffer without key parties sort of agreeing to, and that includes the Corps of Engineers, the Dike Partnership, and Skagit County. So those organizations are at the table making decisions about encroachments. To avoid having those conversations, there's an additional 3-foot buffer, and that gets us to the 200,000 acre feet that we were originally looking for. It's just not all as a solid license article. So next slide, please. Just sort of the nitty-gritty details of the agreement, and I've just sort of highlighted in red outline. So November 1st, under the current license, you get 43,000 acre feet of storage. Under our new agreement, that's an extra 97,000 acre feet of hard storage. So what does that mean? Acre feet's kind of a weird unit to conceptualize. That's more than the Baker Lake provides. So we're getting an entire additional Baker Lake in storage in the new license, which is great. And then in addition, there's the soft storage from the operational buffer that are kind of built in to the agreement. So I want to thank Commissioner Browning and the other 2 commissioners, Oisin and Janicki, for supporting all of the work. Your letter was really great, the early support, and I feel like we're feeling really good about where we ended up in the settlement. So I'm just going to turn it over to Will for the last sort of next steps in the process. Thank you.
Next slide, please. How many slides? Just this last.
The last, one last slide.
Okay. Good evening, Council. Mayor Will Honey, the Skagit County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So the next steps in this process is the hopes that we'll conclude a comprehensive settlement agreement with all the parties. And the goal is by the end of the year. We'll see if that happens. There's a lot of moving pieces. After that, there'll be environmental review, NEPA review. So the settlement agreement would be submitted to the federal government, to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and then environmental review take place. We'll be looking for our city partners to comment during that environmental review in favor of the settlement we've reached. But so this is in a really good place. We have, bottom line, what we've done is been able to secure flood storage at Ross that was originally recommended. Scoop Jackson got involved when Ross was built and insisted on adequate storage. And it was initially there, and it got sort of peeled back. And, the issue here is that we just happen to have been okay on a number of occasions just because they happen to be managing the dam that way. And that's not always a guarantee. So what this provides us is a guarantee of adequate storage. And it really is important for our community because we went through an Army Corps GI process a number of years ago, which is how do we look at getting the valley safe? What they figured out is to move levees, to build levees higher, to build an Avon bypass would be billions of dollars and just massively, dramatically disruptive for the valley to do that stuff as well. What we're doing here has required our time. So in terms of cost-benefit analysis, it really is the number one most cost-effective flood control measure for the valley. So we're pretty happy with the outcome. The other piece of it, of course, was Seattle has agreed to do fish passage at the dams. But it's also the case that this has been a significant conflict, in the early phases of it, and we've come to a much better place and reached some understandings. But conflict sometimes can produce good outcomes. I think about World War II. Well, it produced the United Nations. It produced the Marshall Plan. And what we've been able to do out of this, and I guess because of it, as a result of it, is come together, both local government with the districts. So the Skagit Delta is 14 or so districts that manage the diking and drainage. It's actually more complicated than that, but I won't go into it. But they organize themselves with some really professional leadership. The Dike Partnership that Darrell heads is all of the dike districts, marine and riverine dike districts. And then what Jenna represents is all the drainage systems on the Delta, the tide gates, the pump stations, but they're very closely working together. We've come together into an integrated effort, and that's also involved the Upper Skagit Indian Tribe. We've worked real closely with the Soxhawtl Indian Tribe as well as partners in this, the National Park Service, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And what it's led to is We are in a mediation with all 3 treaty tribes and the agencies, working out some of the thorny issues, the fish farm issues on the Delta, salmon recovery, as well as proposing a long-term integrated planning effort with the tribes. So it's just been a really wonderful outcome, a great experience in a lot of ways, and it's as Darrell suggested, we've done it pretty efficiently. So if you have any questions, I think we have a couple of minutes.
We do. Are there any questions?
I got a quick one.
Yes.
Can I get a copy of that PowerPoint off your website?
Well, we don't have a website, but I'm sure John.
The county, I was thinking of the county, but
It's posted alongside the packet.
okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Technical
Burns?
question, I guess. So that 140 capacity, let's say they're just sitting right at the edge of that, and we have the worst flood we've had so far. We just hit the record. Are we going to be okay at that point? Is there still room to spare?
Well, I think that's a good question. You're doing your best to reduce the risk, and there's always a risk of a major flood. And so the full risk portfolio includes dikes, it includes EMS, it includes disaster management, evacuations, Red Cross. And so I'm a hydrologist, so safety is sort of like, I don't really know how to answer that question, but I think this is a big part in sort of helping mitigate the risk and have more warning if there is going to be a catastrophic flood. But if there's a 100-year flood, this isn't going, you're still vulnerable. The 100-year floodplain mapping isn't going to change. People living in the floodplain are still at risk. Mm-hmm. You could never predict in any given year, it's 1 in 100. And so this would reduce the chance that you would hit that and make it more like 1 in, I'll just throw out a number, 150. But it could happen next year. You just don't know. And if you're living in the floodplain, you always have to be mindful of those flood risks.
Just a real quick question, just a random question, I guess. Are we aware of what is the percentage of individuals homes that are actually in the floodplain here in Skagit Valley?
I think the Skagit DEM has that information, but I don't have that information.
I was just curious. Thank you, Jenna.
The map at the beginning kind of shows the area.
Okay.
Yeah, just to lead on to that question is that we're risk managers. Mm-hmm. We do everything we can to best manage risk, but we're not. So one of the things that a lawyer told me once in a meeting is make sure that people understand you don't protect them, you manage risk for them. So Mother Nature will do what Mother Nature wants to do. We can best prepare the best we can for her. And then the other part of that is this is a step, and this is a big step, but this isn't the cure-all for floods. Mm-hmm. You could build a 100-year levee, you could go to the 100-year protection, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a 500-year flood that comes. So it's all about risk management and doing the best you can to get to that point.
I had a quick question. I don't know the exact year, but there was an infamous flood on the Columbia River that actually topped Grand Coulee. It was a 500-foot high dam. With the added storage, what pressure does this place on the integrity of Ross?
Well, extra storage actually reduces the probability of an integrity issue because you actually have there's more volume of storage behind the dam.
I see.
But once again, you come back to that probability and that risk issue and how much is Mother Nature going to throw at us? And that's the crystal ball that none of us carry.
Right. Thank you.
All right.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
If I may, and I'm not sure who would answer this, but in the contract, was there any kind of monetary compensation for riverbank improvements? I know it was part of the discussion originally because none of that kind of gets managed very well. It's a wild river, but I believe there were some concepts within that.
Yeah, there hasn't been any discussion on that at our level anyway. We're not privy to the partnership table, which is a higher level of dialogue, but at the level that we confer with Seattle Sea Light, we have not heard anything of that sort.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you very, very much for the work that you have done. I know that this has been an uphill battle, but working with partners and your tenacity and steadfastness, you've actually succeeded and brought about some peace of mind. I remember the 2021 flood, and I remember standing down at our wastewater treatment plant and wondering, when do we make the call to turn it off? Because it was close. It was a matter of inches, really. It was. It was frightening. So thank you, Daryl, Jenna. Thank you, Will, and thank you, Commissioner, for coming, being here tonight and presenting. I know you have another presentation you have to do. Safe travels. And thank you again. Okay, moving on to City Administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. No report this evening.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Councilman Loy.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Kesty, do you have anything?
Thank you. Yes, the Sedro-Woolley Museum is hosting their second annual Easter egg hunt this Saturday from 1 to 3.
I hope you get well soon, Joellen. I'm sorry about whatever it is you have. All right, thank you. Councilwoman Diamond?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Henderson?
So last night, I went to the Skagit Transit Long Range Planning meeting. They're having one, a couple more here in the future at different locations around the county. And I snagged a couple cards, so if anybody would like to take their survey about what you want to see with their future development or anything else, we have these available, so thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilman Cock?
Yes, I attended by Zoom on Friday a meeting of the AWC Ad Hoc Bylaws meeting, and it's a good effort in process to look at a lot of the structures of AWC, such as the Board of Directors. The continuing discussion, and they are going to have an information session in May, is sort of the dynamic tension between the big cities and the small cities, that 57% of Washington cities have fewer than 5,000 residents, which is really interesting. But then for big cities, 59% of assessed value in the state is in King County, which is enormous. So there was also one interesting thing. The mayor of Kent, and I don't know if Charlie's historic institutional memory knows this, she said they were a lot better with sales tax receipts before 2008 when something called streamlining occurred. And streamlining made it possible for businesses that were operating in multiple states to have, I guess, some predictability of their sales tax. But she said it just went through the floor after that. So anyway, that's my report.
All right, thank you, and thank you for attending that.
Sure.
Appreciate that. Councilman Burns?
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councilman Lavaca?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's not even within city of Sedro-Woolley limits. It's more of that Northern State Recreation Area Park. I've been getting some complaints that those buildings are pretty ran down, so I did submit something to our commissioners again, and to see, I recently was over there, and the buildings are very unsafe. So there's no signage up there, and obviously kids do spray paint in there a lot, so it's just a matter of time before one of those buildings comes down on one of these youth that are in there, or people that are in there, or an animal, a pet, a dog or whatnot. A lot of glass, a lot of nails, a lot of broken rafters, a lot of broken wood, so it's very dangerous over there, and I just want to put that out there that hopefully they get something done, but we should be aware of that as in our own community, that when we go to visit that area, to make sure the people we're visiting with just don't wander through.
Okay. All right, thank you. Couple things. First off, I wanted to give a report here that I had received from the new mayor of Burlington, Bill Aslett, who was talking about the first steps, the total amount of individuals that they did house in their First Steps Center. And for us here in Sedro-Woolley, there was a total of 22 that had been taken there and had the opportunity to be safe for the night, stay warm for the night. So nice that that's there, and it's nice for the officers to have some place to take those that are unhoused. So that's great. The other is the many thanks to David Lee, our city engineer and his team, Kyle Anderson, Julie Rosario, and then also Mike Freiberger, on the Complete Streets Grant Award that's going to be used for the 2024 pavement and pedestrian improvements. I know that's really important to the council and was actually talked about in our visioning process that we had. Gosh, I guess it was just a week ago, or a couple weeks ago. So thank you so much for doing that, putting the time and effort into that, and receiving the award. So thank you, David. David's sitting in the audience there. We had an interview today with a candidate to fill possibly the position of Community Development Director, formerly Building and Planning Director. And I wish to extend thanks to council members Kevin Loy and Nick Lavaca and Joe Burns for participating in that. They take time out of their work and their day to make that happen, and we're very grateful that they participate in that. We appreciate your expertise. Also, we had success with our Public Works Director. We offered a letter to Bill Bullock for the position of Public Works Director. He accepted, and he will be in front of you, council, on your agenda April 10th for confirmation. And again, thank you to Alan Henderson and Paul Koch, our council members, for participating in that. Okay, moving on to public comment. I'm going to open it up for public comment. We ask that you keep it to 3 minutes, and if you'll give your name and then how you're affiliated with Sedro-Woolley. So I see Corinne Hamburg signed up. Corinne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. So I'm here tonight, and this actually is kind of nice timing. I'm really excited about the grant that you guys just obtained for pedestrian betterments for our community. I live on the corner of Ferry and Township at 620 Township Street. Sorry, habit. I always say where I am. And there's actually a very dangerous intersection. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with it. Oh, thank you so much, Woody. So at that intersection, it's a very busy intersection on Township. It's the intersection just after the State Street four-way intersection stop. There is no other stop on that street until you get to the Highway 20, Highway 9 intersection. So usually we have a lot of people that like to go 35, 45, 50 miles an hour on that strip as they go towards that four-way intersection near Dairy Queen and Rite Aid. Also on that strip, as many of you know, is the Rails to Trails crossing there as well, which there's just simply a sign that says crossing, and I am a recreationist who likes to run from my home onto Rails to Trails towards Janeke and then down further, and have had many close calls with people not either seeing me or not stopping for pedestrian right-of-way. There's no button stop there for flashing lights or anything. There's a lot of people crossing there with children on bicycles. So that's my second intersection of concern. This first intersection of concern, as I said, there is a stop sign there at the Ferry and Township intersection where it tees. There isn't a stop sign on Township in either direction. There is only one crosswalk going from west to east, and that crosswalk is on the southmost, so the bottom side there. There is a crosswalk there going across the street. However, that crosswalk has one crosswalk sign indicator at the crosswalk, and there is not, there's trees kind of growing over it, so you can't really see it, and there is not an ADA on-ramp at the other side. So on the eastmost facing side of the street, there's no ADA on-ramp. So anyone riding a bicycle has to go around to a driveway, out into the street, and then across the street towards town. So I would really appreciate if this is a grant, if this grant money can be spent in any facet in either of these intersections. We've had, I want to say, 4 to 5 accidents of parked vehicles being hit by cars with the vehicles were totaled at that intersection because there is an apartment complex that many cars are parked on street parking there as well. So lots of children, lots of people liking to recreate in that area. And Halloween also is a very dangerous time there too. We have a lot of children. We probably, at my house in particular, we get over 250 to 300 trick-or-treaters. So there's a lot, that's a major safety concern for us and our neighbors within our community. So just would like to bring that to your attention. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will ask online. Is there anybody online? If you could raise your hand online or turn your mic off, maybe. Okay, seeing none, I am going to go ahead and close public comment, and we are going to move right into unfinished business. Why don't we go ahead and take the item that was pulled from the consent agenda, which is creating a limited-term half-time plans examiner building inspector position. And I believe, Charlie, you're going to take this one?
Yes, I can take this, Mayor. So this is a request of the council to add a position to our list of positions that we have, the FTE count, which is the attachment to this item. We have a need to have some temporary help with the building inspector plans examiner role. With the changeover in building codes, we got inundated with building plans under the old codes. And the result of that is we need to get those reviewed. We have statutory limitations and requirements on review times for plans. And so we're requesting some part-time help. It would be unbenefited help. We've got a couple of, that I know of, a couple of retired people with building certifications who have an interest in the role. We could look at, and we did think about, hiring a contractor to do this for us. It's actually going to be more expensive than an unbenefited employee because we're going to end up paying their taxes and a bunch of other stuff on top of the rate that we would pay an employee straight away. So with this being the most cost-effective option, we've got some salary savings because our interim director is not full-time. And we would like to use it on this. So that's a part of this. We just have the budget already allocated for it if the council's supportive of allowing us to have this half-time person assist us.
Okay. Any more questions regarding it?
If I may, Madam Mayor?
Yes,
One of the items that I've gotten from various community members is that sometimes those permits take a long time. I know that we're down, I believe, pretty much a half a roll since we're using a consultant, and we have Nicole, and you're doing a wonderful job, by the way. Appreciate all that. But I would be in support of getting a part-time permit person in there just to help move that backlog along and keep those wheels rolling for our residents so they don't have to wait, months or extreme amounts of time trying to get permits through.
I have a comment. So this is really almost like in private sector attempt to bring in, to do some overfill work, right?
That's exactly what it is. And I was debating on whether to list it as a 0.1 or a 0.5. It's going to be a half-time person, but we're planning on just 5 weeks. And I wanted a little bit of flexibility in that. So, the way it's listed, it could be a half-time position for the entire year, but that's not our intent. Our intent is really like 10% of the year, essentially, at full-time, if you thought of it that way. So in any event, we only have money for a short period of time anyway. So we simply are looking for the help, and so I listed it in there as a 0.5.
Charlie, so when does that statute expire for those building plans to get reviewed and approved?
There are statutory requirements. Nikki, I'm wondering if you can help out on this. Nikki's going to know it better than I am off the top of her head.
It ranges usually between 60 and 90 days.
And I do know we've also had to post signs stating that we cannot take permits for a week or whatever because of the backlog. Is that correct?
We have a workload in also transitioning to the new code, so that was our intent, was to try to get everybody to get them in as early as they could, and most folks did.
Okay.
But we did still take some during that time.
Okay. And hopefully this will reduce that possible closure again?
Yeah, this should help.
Okay.
Okay, and so the $9,500, is that a hard stop? Is that where we're expiring? Or is it, because you said it could be a half-time employee for up to a year, but maybe not?
Yeah, that's just an estimate for what it would be halftime for 5 weeks, which is what we think the need is at this point. It's not a hard stop. We could continue on. If the council wanted to limit this further to just 5 weeks, we could edit this to a 0.10 FTE.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying it's going to take 5 weeks, then we can always revisit that. If you guys, because I don't want to do more than we need to do.
We would not do more than we need to do, but we respect however the council wants to handle it.
How many permits are you talking about?
I don't know. Nicole probably knows directly.
I can answer. BYK has filled our permit inbox with the rest of Bucko Estates and Parkland Loop, so that's probably a good 50 permits, among other individuals doing their own projects too. It's a lot.
How long have they been waiting?
Good question. So our permits are first come, first served basis as we review them. So with BYK, all of their permits, they're getting issued one by one, kind of at a time. So they kind of tell us which ones they're kind of edging more towards wanting to build first. So we're trying to work with them on that, but they recognize that it's going to take a while to get through all of these. So however long it takes, but they're getting them piece by piece.
The code change happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, so that's when we got the big surge of additional plans. Everybody trying to get in under the deadline.
And Charlie, I did misspeak. Your code is, most of yours are 120 days.
Thank you, Nikki.
Well, this seems perfectly reasonable to me. Worst case, it sounds like we'd go 120 days before we've hit the point where those permits have exceeded our legal allowance anyway. So I believe that this makes perfect sense to not overdo it on what we're expecting of the staff.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, if I may, on just part of that, is there a way to do the large developers and have a slice for residential people? Just on my case, I'm actually looking at doing something this summer, so I'm planning way in advance. But I'm getting local contractors for concrete and for roof and for addition, upstructure, and they're telling me permits around here are super hard to get. Get them as quick as you can. They're a pain in the butt to get, and I'm getting 3 bids at every sector that I'm looking at. And so that's why I'm kind of looking if just a resident wants to do a home improvement and they've got to wait months and months and months for 50 home permits to go through or something like that. I don't know. Is there a way that we can create here's the developer side and here's the residential side, and they just get a small slice, not like, but they kind of get in there. So we're cycling both at the same time, taking the small gear and the big gear and rolling them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a legal question, just given the different permit types. It's typically how we look at it is permit types versus exactly who the applicant is and what the level of project might be. But there are ways to set fees different for different user groups, and that can certainly be a discussion in the future. Nikki, do you have any further thoughts on our ability to segregate residential for small residential versus large residential, for example?
We would need to follow the code, which is 2.90, and the procedures that are outlined in the code. I'm not intimately familiar with planning's internal process, but I would assume that they are taken on a first come, first served basis, and then the more complicated projects are, oftentimes sent out for review, and the developer then pays for the outside review of those plans. So it's probably in part an internal process, how they're taken in and how they're divvied up.
Yeah, I figured that. All right, thank you so much.
I just want to say I support this to speed up the process of permits and to help our staff.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Well, I was just going to kind of make a statement turn it into a kind of question. Years ago, there was a plan to make it a one-shop stop for the planning department. You could go in and walk out with your permit, and apparently that never happened, but how can we start thinking about having our new planning director work out a one-stop shop?
Yeah, I think there's great opportunity with our new director, once we get him on board, to start working towards those types of things. We've talked about in the economic development strategy as well, really honing in on permitting. One of the things that we can absolutely control when it comes to our interactions with the public, with people wanting to do development here. So yeah, we would definitely make that a priority. And we have a need to streamline and go to a fully electronic review system anyway. There's new state law that requires us to do that. So we're going to be working really hard on our processes and working really hard on getting more efficient here in the next remainder of the year, next 6 to 8 months.
Well, like I say, that plan was a long time ago, and is there any way we can put it on some list that it actually gets done this time?
I think efficiency in government is important. So it is, I mean, yeah, there's the flip side of that too, but some of it is designed to be inefficient, but nonetheless, efficiency in government is something we really care a lot about, and appreciate the comments, and definitely will work harder towards that as we get a new director on board.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilman Burns, second by Councilwoman Diamond. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries for creating a new limited-term half-time plans for the examiner building inspector position. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to unfinished business, the adoption of the amendment to Title 13 Stormwater Code Chapters, Ordinance 206824. This is the third read, and I don't know, Mr.
Yes,
Freiberger?
at your request,
Yeah.
Council, David Lee is here tonight to address that, so if you have questions, he's available to come to the podium and do that.
Awesome. And I thank you for your patience with this, David. I appreciate the email. I appreciate the feedback. You did send us a pretty thorough email there. And my concerns were, are we locking ourselves unnecessarily into corners that might not be there? And I think I've expressed that to you in the past with the lid when it first was being discussed a couple of years ago. So I've gone through the new revision, and I asked you if you had too, and then it sounds like you did go through that. There's not a lot of changes there. And it doesn't change much from what we have. It's not super tightening. Marysville has a much larger community, of course, and then they're right next to a waterway, but we're right next to the river. And so I do see the comparisons in the two communities that you've chosen to kind of base that off of, and where you saw that things might be needed and might not be needed in order to follow all the DOE recommendations and guidelines from the stormwater manual. I guess part of it we can't really change, but some of it's kind of extreme. We're allowed to make our own criminal sector of that, and part of that is a $5,000 fine and 1 year in prison possibly for violation. That obviously, if you have a swell, then you would have inspectors, which I think we've already hired one in the county, correct? That would go through and just visit sites, but that I'm looking more like homeowner, even though that's based on a lot more of developments, but that they would have full access anytime to come in and kind of check out the swells, make sure they're mowed, and make sure everything that we're working on, all the lids, are maintained. So some of those just seem restrictive, but they're not different than what we've had in our past one. So as reading through it, it didn't look like it was much different. So I do appreciate you sending that email out to help clarify some of those areas that have changed, especially with the MPDSs. Are we required to have, I guess it's already in there, but the stringent wording of like 1 year imprisonment if you don't adhere to these sectors? Because it sounded like we're held to the guidelines that are based on the WAC, and the WAC is holding us to the same DOE recommendations. But then the recommendations in the stormwater manual says according to the local municipal code. So we kind of set our own code on a lot of that stuff.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Is the blue light on?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so you're referring to the sections in there on the, yeah, let me, on the criminal violation and civil enforcement, correct? Yeah. Yeah, and those are kind of what's been there. It does refer to our Title 18 and those, the actions for violations and penalties in that. The permit for these sections basically just says we need to have an enforceable and progressively enforceable codes for violations to the stormwater element. So that's basically what these are. So, but if I'm understanding, you think that they're too harsh for what?
Well, as you're reading through it, it seems like there's some pretty big steps there. And the intent of the regulation is to reduce the turbidity going into the rivers from a construction site or a land site. It's also to reduce any kind of pollutants. So basically just rainwater goes into the land and clean rainwater is discharged.
Correct.
And so, it just seems like laying out like, okay, here's the steps for what the intent of this standard is and what we're looking for. And accountability should be there if people are just willfully disregarding it. But I think ours is, it just seemed to me, maybe it's not to the rest of the council, maybe it's not to the rest of the world. But when I'm looking at like, wow, 1 year in jail for, not mowing your, not that they would do that, and I doubt they would, but the codes go.
Yeah, granted, those kind of things are for your gross, purposeful, negligent violations of the code. So I think there are elements within those that you base that on the severity, so.
And just one last question, in acceptable products to go into the storm drain, I have a hard time finding this, but basically de-icer, sand, things that we put all over the roads during the winter time that gets into our stormwater system and into our ground and wash back into the creeks. Have you read anything about that at a conference? Have you heard anything about that?
Well, it's certainly brought up. It's done all over. They know it can be a problem. So again, the ideas with that are just minimize the use.
Okay.
Where you can, basically.
Seems like they hold residents to very high standards, but then when there's a clear pollutant that we put all over our roadways, we kind of pull that back because we need to have that pollutant. And if you read the packaging, it does say harmful to plants and fish and aquatic life. But
right.
That's just reading through it and trying to see what is the intent of the stormwater, and then what do they turn a blind eye to, but they hold others accountable. It's always back and forth, I guess. Thank you again for writing that out and taking the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. I think it makes a little better, as I kind of explained. I think these are a little more specific to what they were meant for. Things have changed over the years. The new permit, as I did look at, looks fairly similar. There will be code changes that'll need to be made, but they're years out from being required. But it doesn't say that any time in between you can't make them if they make things better.
Yeah.
So.
As pointed out, the one that we currently use, 2019 to 2024, Phase 2, expires in July 31st of 2024. And then the new one's enacted, but it's not enacted for what you were saying until 2027, 2028. Is there just a law in that? Or is there, I know that we wanted to kind of clean it up, but was there a push to get that in before that expiration took place?
No, I've been kind of working on this for a couple of years. So, right, the current permit is set to expire in August. If there are no appeals that delay the release of the next permit, it would become active at August of 2024. The 27-28 years that I mentioned, within the permit, they schedule things out. So by December 31st, 2028, you should have these things done, these code things done, or these actions done, or these policies done. So they don't hit you with these things right at the first year. They give you a few years to get it going and get it worked in, and so you can plan it out. This was just, again, kind of bringing it better up to speed with the current permit, in my humble opinion, anyway.
Yeah, just last thing, and it follows along with the DOE recommendations very well, and I've seen some that maybe go, they exceed that by far, and the standard says unless federal or local municipality code is stricter, you must follow those codes, or federal or local. So I've seen municipalities build into their own municipal code stricter standards than what's even required by the state, which is fine if that's what the municipality wants to do.
Right.
But we at least have to meet the recommendations, which are guidelines by the DOE.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, are there any other questions from any of the council members? If not, I am looking for a motion. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 2068-24.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilman Burns, second by Councilman Cock, and this isn't a motion to approve ordinance 286824. It's an ordinance of the City of Sedro-Woolley, Washington, amending Title 13 Water and Sewer Division Storm 2, Stormwater Management by repealing existing Chapter 13.36, Stormwater Management, and adopting the new Chapter 13.36, Stormwater Management, repealing existing Chapter 13.40, Stormwater Maintenance, and adopting a new Chapter 13.40, Stormwater Maintenance, and adopting a new Chapter 13.42, Illicit Discharge, Detention, and Elimination, IDDE, of the Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to new business, adding section 9A.84.010, fighting to Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code Chapter 9A.84, Public Disturbance Ordinance 206924. Action is requested tonight. So, Chief Dan, yes?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is something that has come up over the last few months and been passed down from the sergeants of what's going on downtown at nights. This is an ordinance that we actually had previously before we adopted the new ordinance, which repealed our Sedro Municipal Code we had previously. So what we're looking to do is add that back into our municipal code. Basically, that gives us a little bit more tools to deal with the fights downtown. The drinking establishments are getting more busy since COVID. It took a while to get back up, but we are having some more issues downtown, and it would give us that little extra tool to deal with that. Right now, we don't currently have a law that fits two people fighting and then mutual fighting, and then so we get called to a fight in progress. We go code, we run there, and deal with detaining a couple people. If they decide, hey, we don't want to press charges, then we pretty much let them go at that point. This would fix that issue and hold them accountable. So what I'm looking for is action for approval.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Chief McElraith? Councilman Cock?
No, I was just going to say I support this measure.
Okay.
So if I may, Chief? So if two guys are fighting downtown and then neither one wants to press charges, this would give the ability for the police officer still to press charges. And what happens if they sober up next day and they still don't want to press charges? Is the city now going to press charges against them for public disturbance?
We would issue them a citation. We decide on how they're acting that night, whether they be cited, released, or booked into jail. Right now, that fighting in Sedro-Woolley creates a safety risk. It's a public safety risk. We're trying to ensure the safety downtown, and we don't want to get it out of hand like it was in the past days. So that's the main focus of this, what it would give the officers a tool to place them in custody, issue a court date, show up in court, and then at that point, it's in the court's hands.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it used to be a lot of fighting. You hear all the stories about it. We've gotten away from that with all the logging and everything, but still.
Okay, if there are no more questions, is the council ready to take action?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilman Cox, seconded by Councilwoman Diamond. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This is motion to approve ordinance 206924, adding section 9A 84010, fighting to the Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code. All right, thank you, council. Moving on to item number 2 in the new business professional services agreement, Family Promise of Skagit Valley, House Bill 1406, Affordable and Supportive Housing Funds, first read. Charlie?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Johnson. So this item is kind of a follow-up to a presentation you heard from Family Promise a couple weeks ago, where they referenced some of this, some of the requests here. But to back up a little bit, we've had an agreement with Family Promise for the last almost year, actually roughly the last year, and we extended it. You extended it, allowed us to extend it until the middle of 2024. House Bill 1406, I put a link in the agenda materials, but it's a bill that passed the legislature several years ago now and allows for the acquisition, rehabilitation, or construction of affordable housing, the funding of the operations and maintenance costs of new units of affordable or supportive housing, and allows for providing rental assistance to tenants as well. So Family Promise has been our partner in this area and has requested additional funding for the remainder of 2024. We would essentially, for a little bit of time here, have 2 contracts going if you were to approve this. The one would expire at the end of June. That's been ongoing for a while. The new one would start up as soon as we have approval from you. And it would do the following. So I'm going to go into the scope of work in the back of the professional services agreement and just cover a little bit of what's there. As I scroll, pardon me. Here we go. So there's $2,000 for rental assistance for Sedro-Woolley residents / Family Promise graduates. There's $12,000 for Grace House Sedro-Woolley monthly housing rental. So that pays for 1 apartment at $1,000 a month for a 3rd stage housing guest and 6 bedrooms for 3 transitional house families. There's also $4,000 for operations support for acquisition of Sedro-Woolley housing. There's $10,000 for down payment on a house in Sedro-Woolley to be used for affordable housing as well. So that totals $28,000. And this money is limited to the things I mentioned previously, so we don't have a lot of flexibility with it. If we were to, you were to authorize us to move forward with this contract, we would essentially be down to about $2,000 in the account. So we're raising about $14,500 in revenue each year from House Bill 1406 funding. So going forward, pretty much what they'd be able to do is $14,000 a year to maintain a balance in that fund. So that's the proposal before you tonight, and we wanted to bring it forward for your consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions, and there is a motion there if the council's so inclined.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Bush?
No, I'll make a motion to move forward with the amendment or for the professional service agreement with Family Promise of Skagit Valley.
Second that.
All right, thank you. And we have a motion by Councilman Lavaca, seconded by Councilwoman Diamond for the professional services agreement, Family Promise of Skagit Valley. It's House Bill 1406, Affordable and Supportive Housing Funds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, council. And as we heard in the presentation, I think it was a couple council meetings ago, this is really going to go towards some great work. Thank you very much for being committed to that. It's greatly appreciated by the community as well. Next item is, I believe, Nicole, this is you, the amendment to Chapter 1604, Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code Shadow Platting, Ordinance 207024, again, a first read.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. So over my 3 years here at City Hall, I've had a good number of customers come to me with ideas of subdividing their properties. Oftentimes, I'll get people who own larger properties, and they're asking me about the possibility of sectioning off 1 or 2 lots at minimum lot size and then selling the rest, or similar situations. And I have to explain to them that we do have in our subdivision standards a minimum density requirement of 4 units per acre. There are no variances to allow development under that. So for that reason, we cannot process subdivisions as they're asking to do, typically leaving said customer to feel disgruntled, that they're not interested in performing a full subdivision. Maybe they don't have the finances for that. Maybe they're just simply not ready to take something like that size of a project on. It's very expensive to develop at that scale. So the GMA requires that every city plan to reduce urban sprawl. So the minimum residential density of 4 units per acre was a framework that the GMA put in place to kind of guide jurisdictions toward that end. But because the GMA is a quasi-judicial agency and they act exclusively through local governments to accommodate local needs, they don't have the authority to make public policies. So cities can exercise discretion in how they achieve reduction of urban sprawl per the GMA, while also accommodating for local needs. So I took this issue to the Planning Commission so we could discuss ways other jurisdictions have done this. And the method that stuck with us was shadow platting. This is something that Mount Vernon actually already does, and the regulations I'm presenting to you pretty much mirror what they have in their code. So the requirement, it's written so applicants can use shadow platting to satisfy the minimum density requirement over time, if they can demonstrate that the future development would allow for the eventual satisfaction of that 4 units per acre minimum density. So the applicant has to submit a shadow plat along with their formal subdivision application that shows that the current proposed development would not preclude provision of adequate access, infrastructure, the basic needs for future development that would be 4 units per acre, according to current development regulations. So shadow plats are not binding, they're not recorded documents, provided that any proposal seeking to further develop the property in a manner that differs from the shadow plat that was originally provided to us, they need to demonstrate that whatever their revisions are still accommodate like appropriate rights of way and infrastructure needs to continuously yield a density of 4 units per acre. So the community right now is being heavily impacted by intense residential development, so I think this proposal helps to kind of ease that in many ways. I think it's important to listen to the community and what they would like to see when it comes to subdivision, helps to maintain a sense of ownership of their own property, being able to do what they choose with said property within reason, and still achieving the requirements of the GMA. So things like traffic flow, infrastructure needs, I think can be better planned for and mitigated when development is at a more gradual pace, and that's what shadow platting would provide. So this is a first read. I'm not asking for action tonight, but I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
So are there any questions for Nicole?
What is our minimum space requirement for a plot to build a house on?
Depends on your zone. So R5, you're required 8,400 square feet minimum lot size. For R7, 6,000. And then for R15, there is actually no minimum lot size. You're kind of governed by your setback regulations in that zone.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So the shadow plat that takes place over in Mount Vernon, is that something that they've seen a lot of people take that up?
Yes.
You know? All right, and so residents that have an acre, 5 acres, those are the ones that are saying, hey, I just want to put a house here or a house here, and then sell it with the intent in time, if I need to, do more.
Right, exactly. And there's also the option, you know, you could have, say the ownership changes. We just go back and they say, okay, now I want to develop to the current 4 units per acre, whatever you need. And then, you know, they can always come back and change whatever the shadow plat was, so long as they can show us that it will be 4 units per acre eventually.
So right now, they would have to do, if they wanted to do that, they would have to put 4 houses right then on that plat if they wanted to subdivide and make, and live there,
If it's an acre, yeah.
if it's an acre. All right. How small does it go? Half acre, 2 houses, or
Yeah, so that
1 acre is
it's
the
kind of the
minimum?
ratio, right? So you just kind of would do say it was like a 0.85 acre. You just divide that by 4 and see where that comes out to. You know, so it's definitely you could use this for any situation, really. Shadow platting, I would say, is probably going to be more for your larger properties, acre or more, but you might see it with short, little lots too. As long as you have, you know, at least 2 lots, minimum lot size, you know, something like that. You just say, okay, I just want to section off 1 lot and then, well, I guess 3 in this case. So section off 1 lot and have a second section that would be enough for 2 lots in the future. So that would be an example of probably the smallest you could go.
There seems to be a lot of lots around my neighborhood in Ward 2, and I'm just trying to envision how that would look to start populating those once the capability happened.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of the things that's holding them back is that they have to do all at once.
Right,
So
and
it could-
that's kind of the thing that holds people back most is they realize what the cost is going to be. And when you say, okay, I want to subdivide, well, that means you're going to have to put in the infrastructure, the private street, public street, whatever that may be, sidewalks, landscaping, all the utilities. It costs quite a bit. So they're like, I don't want to take all that on. Just maybe 1 or 2 lots, I can throw a couple driveways in, call it a day. But so long as they can provide the adequate space for a future street to go through and say, hey, we have a easement here in the future for utilities to go in, then, and enough space for the lots, then they could do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nicole, so this would, any request for the shadow platting would be on a case-by-case basis, and planning would look at it, right?
Exactly, yeah. We would review the shadow plat exactly the same way we would a preliminary plat, look at it for all the code regulations and make sure everything's met there. So we're not approving just a kind of concept, you know, so
Right.
it does need to show on paper that it works.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, this is a first read, and so we will be bringing this back to you on the 10th, Nicole?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, and you are up for the last of the evening, so.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry. The city attorney's got a prelude for this particular item. So
Okay.
just want to make sure we got that in.
All right.
My apologies, Mayor, but since this is a quasi judicial matter, we do need to run through the appearance of fairness colloquy
Okay.
to make sure that nobody needs to recuse themselves.
Okay.
So prior, it is important to determine whether or not the appearance of fairness doctrine requires any member of this body to refrain from deciding the matter. So I'm going to ask you some questions before we begin. Does any member of this council have knowledge of or have conducted business with either the proponents or opponents of this rezone? Hearing none. Does any member of this council have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in the outcome of this proceeding? Hearing none. Does any member of this council know whether or not their employer has a financial interest in the property or area which will be impacted by the decision in this proceeding? Hearing none. Does any member of this council live or own property within 300 feet of the area which will be impacted by the decision in this proceeding? Hearing none. Does any member of this council have any special knowledge about the substance of the merits of this proceeding which could or would cause the council member to prejudge the outcome of this proceeding? Hearing none. Is there any member of this council who believes that he or she cannot sit and hear this matter fairly and impartially, both as to their respective positions of the proponents and opponents in this proceeding? Hearing none. Has any council member had any ex parte contacts regarding this matter? Hearing none. Is there any member of the audience who, because of the appearance of fairness doctrine, wishes to disqualify any member of the council from hearing this matter? If so, please state the council member and the reasons why you believe the council member should be disqualified. Hearing none. Council, do any of you believe that any council members need to be disqualified due to the appearance of fairness doctrine? Hearing none. Pardon?
So we do have a question. Councilman Henderson is concerned
I
that,
need to measure out real quick whether I live within 300 feet of this or not.
Okay.
Bless you. Okay. I'm good.
You're good? Okay. All right. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nikki.
Wonderful. Feel free to proceed.
All right, thank you. All right, Nicole?
Okay. So this proposal has carried over from the 2023 comp plan docket. The request is from John Benson, the owner of 406 Ball Street. He's looking at rezoning said property from its current R7 zoning to R15 in hopes of pursuing a future multifamily development there. This proposal did get caught up at the Planning Commission during the first attempt at a public hearing due to a statement that was found in the intent section of the R15 zoning code, which restricted rezoning of property to R15. That statement was removed by the council via ordinance 2058-23, and that allowed us to proceed with considering this rezone proposal. So Planning Commission went ahead and held another public hearing at which that recommendation was made by the commission to approve the rezone request. So this property is just under an acre. It's 0.85 acres. The property to the north is zoned R15, so it does have R15 adjacent, and has a 30-unit apartment complex on it. That property to the north does. The property to the south is R7 and has a church on it. To the east and west are R7 zone properties with single-family homes. So under the current R7 zoning regulations, John could develop at 7 units per acre with the ability to place roughly 4 to 5 housing units on site, limited to single-family homes or duplexes. So for single-family homes, you would need 6,000 square foot minimum lot size. For duplex, 9,000, so. Excuse me. If the property were rezoned to R15, it would increase the allowable density to 15 units per acre, yielding him the potential to place roughly 12 housing units through multifamily development. He still has the options of doing single-family or duplex as well. There would be no minimum lot size. Lot size and lot coverage are essentially governed by your setback requirements in the R15 zone. Planning staff and the Planning Commission found that a rezone at this location is fitting for many reasons. City infrastructure has the sufficient capacity to handle an additional 7 units here. The location is fitting for multifamily, given the surrounding uses, and one could argue more visually fitting with the church and the apartment complex that are already there and would be sharing the Ball Street frontage with the future development on this property. And it's a mild impact, yet it does help us edge closer to achieving the state's requirements that cities plan and accommodate for low to middle income housing options for their communities where possible. So again, this is a first read, no action is requested, but I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Any questions for Nicole? Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
All right, That concludes our city council meeting tonight. I want to thank those who are in audience and attendance. It's always great to see people here, and also public comment. With that, our next meeting will be April 3rd. It'll be next week, and it'll be at 6 p.m., and it is our city council study session. With that, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.